So first of all, thanks to all the e-flux folks, Brian and Julieta and Anton and all the Magdalena and Mariana and people who made this happen. So I just wanted to do a little intro on accelerationism just to set up the background, and then I'm sure it'll get disassembled as we go through the evening and no one will agree with it. But I just wanted to lay it out. So I think the most common definition, and by common I think it's the most shared and the most traveled, but also the one that probably lacks the most nuance as well, is that acceleration is a praxis that doesn't directly resist capitalism. Instead, it aims to exacerbate its contradictions and its velocities until the system itself redlines and everything bursts asunder. It proposes that we ride the flows and increase the unraveling of everything as a way to finally accelerate the destruction of the system itself. It calls for turning capitalism against itself in the end. Of course, under any real scrutiny, this definition begins to reveal the many ways in which it is ineffective in defining all the things that are lumped into the term. So in lieu of a pat definition, then I think I want to offer a quickly sketch, very, 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 very schematic map of the development of acceleration. And I think that would be useful in setting up the background for tonight's talk and tomorrow's talk. I think accelerationism has had three phases. I think this is generally accepted. The first in a post-May 68 moment, and it was perhaps best characterized by Deleuze and Guattari's anti-Oedipus, although others could be called to serve as representatives here. The accelerationism of this moment wants to claim that revolutionary potential may lie in the very flows of capitalism. If one can exacerbate the deterritorializations and pressure in just the right way all the loosened dynamics that traditional social arrangements held in check, and in turn complicate all of capitalism's re-territorializations and captures, one may be able to employ the system's very force to revolutionary ends. So they want to claim that one can de-stratify and recombine in new ways, assemble new design machines. This is the short passage that has kind of come to emblematize this logic, right? So it says, what is the revolutionary path? To withdraw from the world market? Or might it be to go in the opposite direction, to go still further? That is, in the movement of the market. Not to withdraw from the process, but to go further, to accelerate the process. The second phase, I think, belongs to British philosopher Nick Land. And so working alongside the emergence of network technology, cyberpunk, and electronic music, he exacerbated and darkened in the late 1980s and 1990s, the line of thinking that Deleuze and Guattari and others were only timidly, it seems in retrospect, working with. So Land ferociously inverted things. It wasn't that we should go further, as much as that the world market should traverse us at an accelerated rate. Forget the paltry shocks of modernity, the massive overhauling that a maturing abstract intelligence like capitalism, egged on by the deregulation and privatization of everything, was going to enact would rearrange things at a planetary scale. Human bodies and institutions should arrange and prime themselves so as to become the best possible vectors for the teleological flowering of capitalism as a technological singularity. It's not Fukuyama's liberal democracy that is the end of history, but it's that intelligence from the future that we call capitalism once it manifests itself fully. Our task before this is to learn how to desire disillusion into its flows in order to become along the way the inhuman novelties or residual crud forged during full social meltdown. The third phase is perhaps one that challenges most the definition we began with. It involves a convergence of numerous lines of thinking that seem to be bound by a neo-rationalist, Promethean, politically universalist core. This new or neo-accelerationism wants to incorporate all sorts of arguments that disenchant the human. It wants to embody a technological savvy universalism. It wants to have a synthetic view in terms of epistemology. At bottom, what this new or neo-accelerationist seems to want is to accelerate the full disenchantment of the earth. It's the Enlightenment's project saddled with nitrous tanks. It takes the end of magical thinking, of all kinds of magical thinking, as our full emancipation, as a freedom that has little to do with yielding to impulse and much to do with devising a set of rational norms and goals that maximize the possibility of a shared unfettering from artificial constraint and protection from natural peril, which is also a way to crack the monopoly that neoliberal capitalism has on the imagination of the future. a monopoly that lays out iterations of equally anemic worlds for us to pick from. And lastly, I think we should mention that there are efforts that spill past the edges of this kind of schematic map that I've sketched. One thinks of someone like Mark Fisher, who finds accelerationist impulses in pop culture. As he says, just because something is made under capitalism doesn't imply that it belongs to capitalism. Part of his project seems an effort to develop an archaeology of pop cultural projects that take over the forms and formats of capitalist culture in order to accelerate progressive agendas, such as the end of the family or the rewriting state-sponsored mediatic platforms toward working class needs. So I think that's a very schematic map of what acceleration is or has been claimed to be. And I think in the end, we'll see that I think it'll be torn apart itself. And then I think the last thing I want to say is about the symposium. I think naively we began with a hypothetical version of what this was going to be. Tonight we're going to have the pros team, right? The folks who are wondering why it has taken so long for this accelerationist thing to get going. And tomorrow night we're going to have the cons team, the wait a minute, not so fast team. But as you will see, and as we should have known considering the list of speakers, I think we will end up with something more exciting and messy and infuriating and deeper and more complicated without teams hamstrung by unequivocal positions. So without further ado, I think I'm just going to introduce tonight's speakers and we'll just get started. So our first speaker is going to be Benjamin Bratton, who's a theorist whose work spans philosophy, art, and design. He's an associate professor of visual arts and director of the DGP, the Center for Design and Geopolitics of the University of California, San Diego. He's also on the faculty of the European Graduate School in South Space, Switzerland. His research is situated at the intersections of contemporary social and political theory, computational media and infrastructure, architecture and urban design problems, and the politics of synthetic ecologies and biologies. His current work focuses on the political geography of cloud computing, massively granular universal addressing systems, and alternate models of ecological governance. His next book, The Stack on Software and Sovereignty, is forthcoming from MIT Press. Right? MIT Press?
Yeah.
Our second speaker will be Daniel van der Velden, who is a member of the Metahaven Studio, which is a studio for design and research. Metahaven's work, both commissioned and self-directed, reflects political and social issues in provocative graphic design objects. Metahaven released On Corporate Identity in 2010. Their solo exhibitions include Affiche Frontier at the CAPC in Bordeaux, Stad at the Kunsthaus in Stuttgart, Islands in the Clouds at PS1 this year, Black Transparency in Maastricht. The group exhibitions include Forms of Inquiry at the Architectural Association in London, Manifesta 8, graphic design production now at the Walker Art Center. Metahaven was selected by Rolling Stone Italia as one of the world's 20th most promising design studios in 2011. The studio was finalist of the Dutch Design Awards in 2012 and awarded biannual Cobra Art Prize in 2013. And Reza Nagarastani is a philosopher. He has contributed extensively to journals and anthologies and lectured at numerous international universities and institutes. His current philosophical project is focused on rationalist universalism, beginning with the evolution of the modern system of knowledge and advancing towards contemporary philosophies of rationalism, their procedures, as well as their demands for special forms of human conduct. So without further ado, Benjamin Bratton.